Welcome all. Tonight, my lesson is the title of it is in the spirit of our upcoming youth rally. Hopefully, you youth, and not so youth, will be there. But I believe the title of the youth rally is B. Is that correct? Okay, I got that correct. But the title of my lesson is Be Sensible. Okay. My hope, my wish, my desire for this lesson is that you are encouraged and you are empowered as you go out into the world of darkness, and that you're that light. You're that bright light that people can look to and look to as being sensible. And for you to have that confidence that you are sensible. Our desires, we're Christians, but we're also humans, and we have human desires. And part of those human desires are social in nature. And those social desires are you want to be thought of as sensible, you want to be thought of as logical, and you want to be thought of as rational. You don't want to be thought of as strange. You don't want to be thought of someone who's just off on the deep end. These are things that generally people as humans don't want to be thought of. But at the same token, we don't want to be thought of strange, but we also want to be unique and special in our own way. So, anyway, so us as Christians, we kind of have a struggle out in the world a little bit. And sometimes we can get down on ourselves because, what's being said around us, what's being said as Christians, what people think of Christians as general. Some of the terms that I hear is, oh man, they're so far out there, they're, far right, they're wackos, Jesus freaks. You've kind of all heard these terms attached to what the world thinks of as Christians. And the world kind of views what we believe and what we practice as illogical, as irrational, and as not making a whole lot of sense. They think that we believe in a collection of fairy tales in a book. We believe in things that nobody can see and nobody can hear. There's no tangible evidence in their opinion. A lot of what the world puts out there is anti-Christian. So, tonight I'm going to put forth to you what sounds more logical, what sounds more rational, what sounds more sensible. What a Christian believes and what a non-Christian believes. And I kind of got this inspiration from my parents. My parents have a very unique start to life, as my father was Catholic and my mother was Lutheran. And when they got together, they decided that, we're not going to either of them. And I would like to think, knowing my parents as I do, that they kind of both looked at that, and I'm just assuming, I don't know this for a fact, but I kind of think they looked at each other and said, you know what, I don't know if what each other have been brought up makes a whole lot of sense. My parents were, when I think of my parents, I think of my parents as solid, logical, sensible, rational people. And you may look at me and you think, that has skipped a generation. But, when I look at my especially my father, I look at him and not much nonsense got by him. I never saw him fall for any fly-by-night, he'd kind of tell me some stories about some of the salesmen that come his way and some of the antics that they would do, and my dad, you just sit there and kind of look at him, But when, my parents were converted by a door knocker. Well, not a door knocker, he was the pulpit minister of the local congregation. And, my parents, through my youth, we tried a lot of different religions. And, we weren't really committed to really any of them. But I firmly believe that when that door knocker came from the Church of Christ, that my mother and father looked at that and said, you know what? That's logical. That makes sense. And they became committed to that more than any other, church that we went to, and still committed to this day. So I'm so thankful that my parents provided that to me, or gave that example to me of that, being logical, even though sometimes you may look at me and think, I don't know about that guy. So what I want to do, I want to put some situations before you, and I want you to, and elders, please don't get up and excuse me off this stage here, but let's take the Bible away for a minute. Don't even think the Bible is part of the equation, okay? And let me run some of these statements by you, and you tell me whether what Christianity puts out there is logical or what the world puts out there is logical. So my first, and this is kind of the basis of what we believe in, is think about there is a God, is what Christianity puts out there, or there is no God, or there are many gods. And think about that for a minute. Even from, a standpoint of, being logical, what's more logical about one of those two statements? How did this all come to be? And you logically can come to the conclusion, something bigger than myself made this all happen. You'd have to try real hard to become illogical to come up with something other than someone creating us to come out how we came to be. And it comes down, it kind of flows right into my next statement. What seems more logical? We are a created being as opposed to we came from spontaneous generation from non-living matter. What of those two statements makes more sense? Or let's go a step further. We came from apes. What makes more sense? We were created, or we just came something that wasn't even living, and it just happened by chance? I look at that and I'm like, wow. What about this? One man, one woman for life versus, hey, I can have as many marriages and families as we want. Look at the effect that each has on society, and you tell me what's a more rational belief. Here's another one. This is a no-brainer, but you look at the world and you think, wow, how can they get so messed up? Heterosexual unions versus homosexual unions. From a point of anatomy, that is as obvious as the nose on my face. And how you can come to where, one versus the other, one's logical, and now you've got our world saying, well, this is logical, or we're made this way, or what have you. Makes no sense whatsoever. What about being sober? The Bible tells us about being sober, being vigilant, versus polluting our bodies with alcohol and drugs. You tell me which one is more logical. What about God communicating or inspiring men, or inspired men, to write one book as a way of communicating to us versus speaking to various individuals, different messages, miraculously? You tell me which one of those makes sense. Or what about this? There's a pattern of righteousness, one pattern of righteousness, a pattern of doing right, or we can do whatever we want and still be right. Not much sense to me there. So, hopefully I've given you some things to think about that you can go out and you think, you know what, I'm not the strange one here. Even on almost a non-biblical standpoint, I'm not the one that's irrational here. You have to be pretty irrational to believe what the world believes in. Tonight, you need to ask yourself, especially if you're non-Christian sitting out here, is it sensible, is it rational, is it logical to be a Christian or not a Christian? Is it logical to believe that there's a home in heaven versus, hey, when we die, that's it, there's nothing out there? Which one is a more logical statement there? Is it logical to believe that it's required to be a Christian to obtain a heavenly home? Or that, everyone who dies is going to heaven? I see that on Facebook. I hear that coworkers. It doesn't matter what kind of life that person leads. General consensus is, hey, that person is a much better place. They're resting now. What's more logical there? So, I'm asking you, for you non-Christians, is it rational, is it a logical decision to become a Christian, or to sit there and stay as you are? I think you can only come to one conclusion. It's illogical, it's irrational, and it's nonsensical if you decide that you should not be a Christian. So, tonight, if you're not a Christian, someone who has put on Christ in baptism, or you're in a state where you have strayed away, make a sensible decision tonight. Come forward as we stand and sing.